All right, well, President Biden's nominee for IRS Commissioner answered questions during a Senate Finance Committee hearing this week, highlighting key objectives he plans to focus on if nominated to lead the IRS. Take a listen.
If I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, the audit and compliance priorities will be focused on enhancing IRS's capabilities to ensure that America's highest earners comply with applicable tax laws. Also front and center will be efforts to modernize and dramatically improve taxpayer service.
And with the 2023 tax season already in session, here's what our next guest says should be the focus of the IRS as it makes its way forward from the impacts of the pandemic. Joining us now is former IRS Commissioner Charles Rossotti. Charles, thank you for joining us this morning. What is your take on the priorities that Werfel is laying out here in terms of the wealthiest taxpayers and really modernizing the IRS as well?
So, I mean, what Werfel said, you can say it in a lot of different ways, but there's basically two main things that the IRS is supposed to do. One is it's supposed to help the average taxpayer comply, meaning file your return. If you have a problem, answer the phones or otherwise resolve the issue. That's called service in general, but it's just basically anytime anybody has to interact with the IRS, make it as easy as possible. That's what he said. And the second one is make sure everybody complies with the law. He focused on upper income people because that's where a lot of the lost revenue is. So, I mean, no matter how you phrase it, those are just logically the two main things that the IRS has to do. And there's a lot to making that happen, but it's not that hard to understand where you're trying to go.
And we know that he was also grilled on where and how he'd spend that $80 billion in extra funding that was approved as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of misperceptions came out when this, of course, was announced. But in terms of what should be prioritized with the funding within the IRS, what would you say?
So I think that it carries directly from the two main things that he said need to be done: improve service and make sure everybody's paying what they owe, especially the upper income. So the first priority, really, in terms of timing, really is to fix the service issues because they have deteriorated very, very badly, as probably any of your listeners know, if they've had to deal with the IRS. I mean, for most people, if they just file a return and it goes smoothly, they get a refund, there's nothing to it. But, you know, with 150 or 200 million things being filed, some of those are going to have a question or return. And when you try to deal with the IRS in any way, it's been very, very poor. A lot of that was made worse by the pandemic and the additional responsibilities the IRS was given. So it has a backlog as well. But even over an earlier period, it's been very, very poor. So the first thing he has to do, I mean, in terms of timing, is fix that. And that won't happen immediately, but it can be done sooner. And a lot of that has to do with hiring trained people, but a lot of it also has to do with improving some of the technology so that the IRS can get up to the kind of experience that most of your listeners are used to when they deal with any financial institution or other kind of service provider. So that's first. And then it's going to take a little bit longer, but the IRS has to update its ability to find where the missing income is efficiently using technology and to train people to follow up when necessary. It's not an across-the-board approach, as sometimes was, I think, misleadingly said, you know, hire thousands of agents and just go out and audit everybody. That makes no sense whatsoever. The IRS has never done that. And even with the additional money that's been provided, the IRS is never going to have even as many agents as it had when I was commissioner 25 years ago, believe it or not. So the only way to do that efficiently is to be very precise and targeted, and you need technology to do that. So on the compliance side, it's not a matter of blanket auditing everybody. It's just the opposite. It's got to be very selective, and you need technology to do that, as well as trained people.
And what about the relationship between the IRS and Congress? We know obviously there was a lot of pushback from the GOP about this, but we did see at least some support for Werfel during these hearings. How important is it that to manage that relationship?
So I said, you know, if I were advising the new commissioner, I'd say there are three top priorities in the beginning for him personally. And number one among those is establishing those relationships with Congress, as well as other stakeholders, because there's many. But building those relationships is key because there's a day-to-day communication that needs to take place. I was very encouraged by the hearing. It was very respectful. As far as I know, I didn't see it, but I heard about it. And I think he was very adept at, you know, doing what he should, which is to promise to be open and honest and communicate. And if there's issues that come up, to deal with them. So that's almost, I would say, the top thing for the commissioner to do. Internally, he has to then set priorities in order to follow through and execute on the things that he promises, and he has to hire a team or put in place a team that can help him do that. And that's at a top level what needs to be done. But it can be done. I mean, when I was commissioner a long time ago, it was also very contentious, as it is sometimes. But over time, if you work with the senators and are really willing to be honest with them, I think most of them are willing to give you a shot at it. And I think Werfel did a great job on Wednesday getting that started.
And of course, as people prepare to file their taxes, if they haven't already, a lot of people wondering about the backlogs. How far are we to really getting that squared away at the moment?
Well, I don't know. I'm not internal to the IRS, so I don't know the details, but I do know that they've made some progress. And I think that, the priority has clearly been established of clearing up that backlog. It's unfortunate that it's accumulated to that extent, so it's going to take some time. But I think everyone there, even before the new commissioner got in place, understood that's got to be the first priority. So I can't give you a time because I'm not inside, but I do know that they're intensely focused on it.
I'm sure that's welcome news. And I do appreciate you joining us with your insights. A big thank you there to former IRS Commissioner Charles Rossotti. Thank you for your time.